Are you looking to submerge into a game less played, yet has tons of creativity? If your answer is yes, I got you covered. From jolly adventures to fast-paced shooters, I've comprised the top 30 indie games to play on the Steam Deck in 2025. Let's check it out. So let's start out with Oceanhorn, Monster of the Uncharted Seas. Oceanhorn, Monster of the Uncharted Seas is the first game in the Oceanhorn series with a colorful world to explore, various islands with different adventures that await, secrets to unfold, treasures to find, as well as enemies and cool bosses to fight. There are also side activities that you can do, such as fishing, as well as puzzles to solve. It is a really fun game where I don't even feel like I'm playing on the screen while on my bed. Rather, I'm outside island hopping or doing all these different adventures on vacation. So yeah, if all that sounds interesting to you, if you want to have a fun indie adventure where you feel like you are enjoying the time of your life, definitely check out Oceanhorn, Monsters of the Uncharted Seas on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Solar Ash. Solar Ash is a fast-paced action platformer game where you get to jump, dash, glide, and fight enemies in a beautiful ancient world, which keeps my adrenaline up. It really feels like a 3D version of Hyper Light Drifter, which is also developed by Heart Machine. But anyways, back to Solar Ash. On top of the fast-paced gameplay, I also love the interesting boss fights, which in themselves have very interesting mechanics, which keeps me on my toes at all times. So yeah, if all that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Solar Ash on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. In this game, you get to play as, you know it, two brothers who lost their mother at sea, and if that is not sad enough, they also have an ill and dying father who can only be cured by drinking from the water from the Tree of Life. So you, as the two brothers, must do all it takes to embark on this journey, which is filled with danger, to get to the Tree of Life, to fetch the water, bring it back home, and hope that their father will get well by drinking from the water from the Tree of Life. What's unique about this game is that you get to control the two brothers simultaneously. You control one of the brothers on the left buttons of your Steam Deck, while you control the other one with the right buttons of your Steam Deck. Now, though some may consider the control layout to be clunky, I personally really enjoyed controlling the two brothers simultaneously on the left and the right side of the Steam Deck. To me, I just feel this sense of emotional attachment to the two brothers when controlling both of them on my Steam Deck simultaneously. It just brings about a warmth inside of me where I feel the love and the bond between the two brothers, that they would do all it takes to go on this journey and see the journey as one to help their father get well. So yeah, if you are looking for a game where there are a whole bunch of different puzzles to solve, as well as you really am looking for a game where there's an emotional story to it, definitely check out Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Haven Park. In Haven Park, you get to play as Flint, who is a small bird with a massive head and who has a grandma who owns, you know it, Haven Park. Now, grandma, she basically hands off responsibility to you to basically, manage Haven Park. Now, as far as the game goes, when you take charge of the various campgrounds in Haven Park, your responsibility consists of repairing various things that are broken, as well as helping various campers with various errands to basically make sure that the campgrounds are all really presentable and where all the campers will feel loved and feel that they are respected. And what I really love about Haven Park is just how colorful the park is and how childlike. It brings this type of childlike vibe to it, in which, it feels as if I'm playing a game, but at the same time, I'm controlling the character in a cartoon-like movie. And that is something that I really like, because believe it or not, even as somebody in the 30s, I still, from time to time, love to watch cartoon-like movies. They are timeless to me. But anyways, if all that sounds interesting to you, if you love a childlike, cozy game where you get to explore this beautiful park to your own advantage and just help all the campers, as well as learn what it's like to maintain a park and whatnot, definitely check out Haven Park on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Hoa. Hoa is a beautiful puzzle platformer where you get to play as Hoa, who is a little fairy, and guide her back to her hometown where it all began. What I really love about Hoa is that there is a beautiful soundtrack that brings about the mood and vibe of the game, as well as there are also cute characters where you get to meet on the way back to your hometown to where it all began, as well as there are also those different puzzles that you get to solve, where some of them may be a bit annoying, but they are also at the same time not impossible as long as you put your heart and mind to want to solve those different puzzles. What I love about Hoa as well, it just brings about this jolly feel, relaxing vibe, as if I'm in nature just going on this hiking adventure, and where it is just animated. It just kind of feels as if somebody just filmed my adventure into the wild and then just made an animated version of me, and as well as an animated version of the nature and the surroundings and whatnot. It is just a game that is just really chill, really relaxing, as well as it just brings about this vibe of just coziness with all these kind of things blended in, and the music to top it off as well. So yeah, if you really love these type of hand-painted drawn art, as well as you love these type of games where there is just these jolly characters, definitely check out Hoa on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Greak Memories of Azur. Greak Memories of Azur is a beautiful platformer where your goal is to lead 3 siblings to help them flee from the land of, you know it, Azur. What I really love about Greak Memories of Azur is the amazing soundtrack, as well as the interesting bosses that you get to encounter, as well as a beautiful world that is fully immersive that I get to explore, in which as I go about playing the game, it makes me feel as if I'm accompanying the 3 siblings, that the 3 siblings are my friends, and that we are going on an interesting adventure while going about hiking and whatnot. As well as what I really love is that as you go about playing Greek Memories of Azur, there are also really interesting characters to meet, as well as different puzzles to solve in which you need to do in order to progress in the platformer game. As well as, more importantly, what I really love about this game is that you also get to control all 3 of the characters simultaneously. And why I say that it is really cool is that it really makes me feel the bond among the 3 siblings, that they are in the adventure together, in which they do not separate. However, with all that in mind, I have to warn you that the game could be a bit tricky because they live and die together. What I mean by that is that in case you are fighting a specific tough enemy or a tough boss, if one of them happens to die, guess what? The mission fails and you will have to start over with the boss fight. Start over from where you left off. So that is something that could be potentially a challenge, in which you will have to pay attention to all 3 of the siblings at all times in order to progress in the game and survive in helping them flee from the land of Azur. That is something in which it is really important. So yeah, if you really love an emotional platformer game where there are interesting characters as well as an amazing soundtrack, and where you will have to be on your toes at all times, definitely check out Greak Memories of Azur on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Astroneer. Astroneer, in this game you can play up to 4 players, and where you and 3 other friends can explore outer space. As you explore outer space, you can collect different resources to build and modify your bases however way you want to imagine your bases to look like. And your goal is basically doing all it takes to survive in this mysterious solar system. Now, even though Astroneer doesn't have monsters, deadly creatures, or any of those traditional enemies that you will find in video games, but there are various environmental hazards that you have to watch out, such as geysers, such as offensive floras, which can expel acid clouds, as well as explode when you get too close, or more importantly, you gotta watch out to make sure you have adequate amount of oxygen, as a few examples of the environmental hazards. But anyways, if you really love a chill building simulator game where you get to imagine you and your friends are living your life on mysterious planet, definitely check out Astroneer on the Steam Deck. Now up next is the Forest Quartet. This game is about a band who announced a final concert due to paying their last respects for their lead singer, who unfortunately recently passes away. However, due to their grief and mental health instability, they could not get themselves to perform at the final concert. So you, playing as Nina, who is the lead singer spirit, it is your job to guide each and every one of the band members out of their grief and mental health problems and motivate them to gather up their courage to pay the last respects of the band by performing one last time. Now, the thing about the Forest Quartet as far as the gameplay goes is that there are 3 different acts, and where each act resembles the specific insecurity in which a specific member is dealing with. So this game is very much in the side of where the visuals and the analogies, the way they present it, really resembles what is going on in the specific character of the game. The visuals speak to the story and the struggles and whatnot. So the Forest Quartet, I will say this, is that there is no bloodshed, there's no that kind of thing. It is really quite relaxing, where the major selling point are, number 1, the meaning of the game, where you just really feel for the specific characters, the struggles and whatnot. But the second thing in which the Forest Quartet has for its main selling point is the puzzles, which oftentimes involve connecting those various lights which generate energy, and where this also further illustrates Nina as a spirit being a light and brightening up all the band members, cognitive realm. So yeah, that is just something that is just really emotional as well as really, really laid back at the same time. So yeah, if you're looking for a cozy game where it is really emotional, but at the same time it primarily involves puzzles in the game as you progress, then definitely check out the Forest Quartet on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Creatures of Ava. In this game, you get to play as Vic, who's on a planet called, Ava. In this game, you get to clear the land from corruption known as the Withering, as well as in the meantime tame various creatures from the Withering, in which clears the corruption in their minds and helps them to no longer be foes but friends to you. Now once you clear different various creatures, the corruption in their minds, you can play your flute to basically guide them to the nearest rescue robot station in order to transport them to your ship with the goal of preserving the various species. Also, each animal that you restore them to their normal state where they become your friend, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses, where they can overcome certain obstacles to get into certain areas where you normally cannot do on your own. And what's cool about that is you actually am able to get into a mode where you'll be able to play as the specific animal and control the actual animal as if it was you, and where you overcome the certain obstacle and be able to access certain areas that you cannot access before. So that's something that is really cool, as well as there are also a lot of side quests as well as main quests that are also intriguing as well, and where as you progress in the story, you will also be able to earn certain tools and certain abilities where they will help you also access certain areas that you normally cannot do before. So yeah, it is just really, really fun, really, really cool, as well as really, really engaging. Now, another thing that's really cool about Creatures of Ava is that since you are on the mission to save the different animals from the corruption, you get to document each and every one of those creatures, no matter if it is the ones that you already tamed or those that are still in the wild. You can do so by taking out your in-game camera and capturing a shot of the various animals. And once you capture a shot of the various animals, there will be details which will be recorded recorded about the specific type of animal that you captured. It is a really cool game with vibrant colors. There are also really cute characters and whatnot. So yeah, if all that sounds really interesting to you, if you love these type of adventure games where there are no bloodshed and where you feel like you are making a difference, definitely check out Creatures of Ava on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Lethal Company. Lethal Company is a co-op horror first-person survival game set in a futuristic world where you and up to 3 other friends get to assume the roles as contractors of the company, and where it is your job to explore abandoned moons and collect certain amounts of scraps and go back to return and sell them to the company. Now, as far as the abandoned moons goes, there are various hazards, various traps, as well as various harmful creatures that get in your way, in which you gotta watch out. And where in this game, it's all about being careful and collecting enough scraps in order to meet the quota that the company sets for you. If you love horror survival games and where there is a whole bunch of unexpected things to happen in the game, definitely check out Lethal Company on the Steam Deck. So number 20 is the Riftbreaker. The Riftbreaker is a base building real-time strategy game where you play as Ashley, who gets to explore and gather various resources, and where you get to use the resources to build necessary buildings for your base, whether it is research buildings, whether it is energy buildings, whether it is ammunition buildings. And what I really love about this game is as you get to build and you get to explore, you get to attack hordes of enemies in hack and slash style, where you must do all it takes to fend off the enemies from destroying the base. So yeah, if you really love these type of base building games where there is a whole bunch of action to it, where there are hordes of enemies that you gotta deal with, as well as you get love, where there is a beautiful world to explore and find those different nuts and cranks, definitely check out Riftbreaker on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Undertale. Undertale is a top-down RPG game where you get to play as a child who unfortunately falls into the underground. The underground is a place where basically it is an isolated area separated from the earth from a magical barrier. Now, what I really love about Undertale is there are plenty of towns and caves to explore, as well as solve those various puzzles, as well as there are also various enemies and monsters to encounter, and where the monsters you can choose to whether kill them, whether to run away from them, or whether to befriend them. And what is really interesting about these different choices, these different options, whether to kill them, whether to run away from them, whether to befriend them, is that no matter what choice you pick, it will greatly affect the plot of the game, and it will lead to various different types of endings. So yeah, if you really love these type of retro vibe type of games where there is a whole bunch of different places to explore, as well as there's an awesome story with a whole bunch of different endings, definitely check out Undertale on the Steam Deck. Now number 18 is Midnight Fight Express. Midnight Fight Express is a beat 'em up game where you get to fight in a whooping 41 various levels, and it will also be able to use every fighting technique and tool in the environment, and where you get to use both melee as well as firearms to the fullest. What I really love about Midnight Fight Express is that it consists of 3D motion capture graphics, and it also is displayed in top-down perspective, so it is really cool to see what is going on in the game, where normally if a game is in 2D or 3D, you may not be able to see it. You'll be able to see an overview of the perspective, kind of like how if you were to look at a security camera in a specific building. That's just what it just feels like, in my opinion. But anyways, in Midnight Fight Express, you get to play as Babyface, who gets to fight all over the city before dawn to basically prevent the criminal takeover of the city. It's a really fun, chaotic game with waves of enemies to fight, as well as what I really love about this game is that it also brings about the vibe of, martial arts to it. So yeah, if all this sounds really interesting to you and you really love these type of games where there are tons of enemies to fight and literally beat them up as if it is your city, definitely check out Midnight Fight Express on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Animal Well. Animal Well is a Metroidvania platformer game where you get to play as a blob and you get to explore this labyrinth with a whole bunch of animals that you get to encounter along the way. What I really love about Animal Well is that there are a whole bunch of different secrets that you can reveal as you go about exploring, as well as you get to solve all these different puzzles in this pixel-vibed world. And what's really great about Animal Well is that it is a non-linear game in which you can explore and obtain those different items with no particular order. So basically it is a game in which you can easily pick up and drop whenever you want to, take a break from those hard, intense games. You can easily come here and you can play it and drop whenever. So yeah, if you really love these type of Metroidvania games where there are cute characters, as well as you love these games with a retro vibe type of thing where there is a whole bunch of different places to explore and whatnot, definitely check out Animal Well on the Steam Deck. Now number 16 is Eastward. In this game, you get to, travel eastward, and you're basically traveling eastward on the journey to escape your civilization, which is unfortunately about to collapse. What I love about Eastward is there are various enemies to fight, as well as there are very charming, towns when you go about along the way traveling eastward, as well as you get to meet very strange, very interesting humans along the way. So yeah, if you love games where there is a big sense of adventure, where it is quite memorable, and where there will be a really great grand story to tell, definitely check out Eastward on the Steam Deck. Now number 15 is Pacific Drive. Pacific Drive is a first-person driving survival game where you get to play as a lone ranger with only your car as your buddy. Yeah, very isolating, very lonely. However, in this game, what's really cool about it is you get to gather various resources each time you travel out from your abandoned garage, which is basically your home away from home at the moment, and where you get to use those different resources that you gathered each time going out on a road trip to gather those different resources. Those resources you get to use to upgrade your car, as well as upgrade the equipment to basically make your car be more efficient and be able to run better. What is really cool about Pacific Drive is that in the meantime, as you go about outside to venture out to gather those different resources in the Pacific Northwest, is that you have to learn how to overcome all odds while facing various dangers, and as well as overcoming various hazards. There will be various storms that could happen which cause you to have to go back a bit earlier, as well as there are also those different anomalies that will get in your way in which you gotta deal with. So yeah, if you really love these type of driving simulators in a procedurally generated world, definitely check out Pacific Drive on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Loopmancer. Loopmancer is a 3D roguelite game where you get to play in a cyberpunk-like universe, and where you assume the role of a Chinese detective where you must go after a gang in Dragon City, which is a futuristic fictional city. The thing about Loopmancer is that every time you die, you get resurrected again, and you have to restart the mission again to deal with the various gang overlords. What really shines in Loopmancer is the colors. They really pop on a screen, especially an OLED screen. So if you are somebody who loves these type of hack and slash games and you have a Steam Deck OLED, definitely check out Loopmancer. But even if you are somebody who just loves these type of Chinese style vibe type of games and you love hack and slash games, you will also have fun with the game on the Steam Deck LCD. So yeah, definitely check out Loopmancer on the Steam Deck. Now number 13 is Turbo Overkill. Turbo Overkill is a very chaotic first-person shooter game where you get to play as Johnny Turbo, who is half human as well as half metal. How cool is that? And where you get to brutally slice those different enemies with no mercy in public whatsoever. What I really love about Turbo Overkill is that it is a very unique boomer shooter where you get to just do all it takes to literally show everybody who's the boss, as you just mercilessly absolutely demolish those different enemies, whether it is shooting them, whether it is slicing them, doing all those different fast-paced action. It's just something that is just really cool and really fun, and where the chaoticness is just so freaking priceless. So yeah, if you really love these type of fast-paced first-person shooter games where there's a very interesting type of gameplay style, definitely check out Turbo Overkill on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Void Bastards. Void Bastards is a really fun first-person shooter game where you get to enter various spaceships, fight various enemies while surviving, and salvage parts to repair the ships. If you love these type of first-person shooter games where you get to explore spaceships as well as fight various enemies, definitely check it out on the Steam Deck. Now number 11 is Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania game where you get to play as a silent insectoid warrior named the Knight, hence the name Hollow Knight. And where in this game you get to explore Hollow Nest, which has fallen due to a supernatural disease. Yeah, very, very unfortunate. But what I really love about Hollow Knight is where you get to engage in fighting those various enemies, as well as there are very interesting yet tough bosses in which you gotta also deal with, as well as also, like a lot of Metroidvania games, there are a whole bunch of various secrets in the world in which it is really awesome and really interesting to discover and find. So yeah, if you really love Metroidvania games in which they really cause you to be on your toes and where it is quite a bit challenging and where it really tests your patience, definitely check out Hollow Knight on the Steam Deck. Now number 10 is Hotline Miami Collection. Hotline Miami Collection includes both games, Hotline Miami 1 as well as Hotline Miami 2 Wrong Number. Hotline Miami games, they are top-down shooter games where you have to go through each level and kill all those different enemies as well as survive, whether it is via shooting them or using melee combat. It is something that is also very challenging as well if you are not really good at reflexing, not really good at strategizing, not really good at remembering enemy patterns of where they're at and what they do, their attacks, their movesets and whatnot. If you're not good at adapting to all that, it can be very, very frustrating. If you get hit once, you're dead. However, if you are somebody who is really good at these kind of stuffs and really want to test your skills to become a better gamer, to be better at those games that require a lot of reflex as well as a lot of the strategizing and planning, I would highly, highly recommend Hotline Miami Collection. I mean, Hotline Miami Collection, I will also have to say this, is that it is really important that when you start out to play the first game before you play the second game, as Hotline Miami 2 is really dependent on Hotline Miami 1. It builds on from Hotline Miami 1. But Hotline Miami 2, you get access to more characters, you also get access to new weapons, as well as you also get access to new satisfying, finishing moves. But anyways, if you are somebody who loves these type of challenging games and you also like the aesthetics of how it has this comic kind of feel, but yet it's also quite graphical, I would definitely highly recommend Hotline Miami Collection on the Steam Deck. Now number 9 is Oxenfree. Oxenfree, in this game you play as Alex, who went with her friends to this abandoned island where you wanna party and have a great time. Now unfortunate events unfold and you and your friends just get stranded onto the island, and where you and your friends, you gotta work and do all it takes in order to escape the island, as well as in the process of doing so learn the various mysteries of this mysterious island. This game, it does have horror elements to it, but at the same time it is also not too scary in my opinion. I'm not somebody who plays horror games all the time, but I can still enjoy from time to time. But for this game, the Oxenfree, even though there are some horror elements, it is not something that is just so outrageous that where you will be so nervous and all that different stuff. I still feel that Oxenfree is still manageable, especially if you love the other aspects of it, because Oxenfree, I would say the major selling point with it is that there are various dialogue options with your friends that you gotta watch out. You gotta make sure to choose a specific dialogue option that you actually want to choose, because it can either cause your friends to either love or hate you. I mean, that will really affect the endings of the game, so that is something to also keep in mind. So yeah, if you love, thriller games where you get to explore these different mysterious lands as well as at the same time have fun with a great set of characters characters and also love these type of games that have these different puzzles that helps you think and work with your brain, definitely check out Oxenfree on the Steam Deck. Now number 8, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. In this game you play as this protagonist named Jin, who has an evil uncle who unfortunately casts a spell which caused the entire village, all those humans, to turn into animals. Yeah, very, very tragic and very, very unfortunate. So you as Jin, it is your job to put an end to this madness and at the same time free the spells to make the animals turn back into humans. What really stands out in Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, what I really love about it, is how throughout the journey you get to get those different types of orbs, which allows you to become different types of animals, which you will have to use to your advantage, where when you swap to those different type of animal forms, it will help you progress in the game, as certain animal forms may be useful for certain types of missions in order to progress. That's what I feel is just really, really cool, as well as I really love the beautiful world that this game entails. I also love the very cute NPCs, as well as it has very interesting boss fights, as well as the soundtrack is also amazing. I feel like the game is really balanced in the soundtrack, where it brings about the vibe of whatever is going on in the game. It is just perfect. It just complements the game to its fullest. So yeah, if you really love a colorful platformer where there is an interesting story, as well as there are lots to do, there are also these different chaotic fights, as well as interesting bosses, as well as there are also a great world to explore and where you can kind of think and strategize and whatnot, definitely check out Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom on the Steam Deck. Now number 7, The Wild at Heart. In this game you play as Wake, who has a rough childhood and decides to run away from home into the woods, where he meets with his friend Kirby. And little did he know that as he went into the woods, he gets into this kind of mysterious civilization, and then he later on meets with Kirby, and where they together will help the civilization fight the darkness and also help the inhabitants to feel safe and secure and at peace. What I really love about The Wild at Heart not only is the childlike vibe to it, but also what I really love about The Wild at Heart is where it brings about this interesting gameplay style where it blends adventure, blends open world, where you get to explore and do all these different stuffs in a very non-linear way, as well as it also blends the real-time strategy subgenre. The whole point about the gameplay is you get to harvest various, little creatures called spritelings, and where there are different types of spritelings, which brings about different strengths as well as different weaknesses in which you will have to utilize as your life source in the game. I mean, the spritelings, basically, they help you to either overcome those different obstacles where you need to overcome in order to progress in the game, as well as the spritelings also help you fight those various enemies in order to make the village feel safe and secure. Each type of spriteling, they bring about various types of strengths and weaknesses, as well as also what I really love about The Wild at Heart is how they depict the concept of how teamwork makes the dream work. Aside from the spritelings that help you to fight those different enemies, what I really also love is how the two friends, they complement each other. They all complement on their strengths and weaknesses. Whatever Wake cannot do, Kirby will assist Wake in order to progress in the mission. Whatever Kirby cannot do, Wake will assist. It really resonates in me in the fact that sometimes it's good to have friends that are not necessarily the exact same as me, but where they actually could be opposites, where they can just complement me, complement my weakness, and where they can encourage me and build me up, as well as me doing the same to encourage them and build them up. So yeah, if you really love childhood fantasy type of games where you get to go around and explore in a very non-linear format, as well as you also love these games that have a beautiful soundtrack and where the game may be simple but it may speak to you in many different ways, definitely check out The Wild at Heart on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Valheim. Valheim is a beautiful open world survival RPG game where you get to build, fight, conquer different enemies, and it is set in a Viking vibed island where you also get to gather different resources such as, farming, such as hunting, such as going mining, to do all it takes to get the proper resources in order to build your land. What I love about Valheim is that, you can take your time to build your land, while at the same time it also blends in where you get to fight those different enemies and also be able to marvel at this beautiful beautiful fantasy world. I mean, this is just something that is just really nice. And if you have a really massive brain and where you are very good at imagining things, you have a big sense of imagination, Valheim is just perfect, because a lot of people that play Valheim, they just get addicted in building their land, and where they can easily spend 100, 1,000, or hell, even 10,000 hours to play Valheim in order to enjoy and just get submerged in the Viking world. So yeah, if you love these type of building games, as well as you love these type of open world games where you get to do things in a very non-linear format and where it is very timeless and your possibilities are endless, definitely check out Valheim on the Steam Deck. Now, number 5 is Deep Rock Galactic. Deep Rock Galactic is a first-person shooter co-op game where you get to play as dwarfs. You know, you and 3 other friends get to play as dwarfs, where you get to explore a procedurally generated galactic world filled with caves and various types of missions. What I love about this game is where you get to mine to get those various resources, as well as you get to use those resources to repair those various equipments. It's just a very fun, cooperative, engaging game, as well as it just brings about imagination, you know, because who doesn't want to be in space? Who doesn't want to be spending time with their friends in space and just exploring those various types of caves and while embarking on those different missions? So yeah, if you're looking for a cooperative game to play on your Steam Deck, I highly recommend Deep Rock Galactic. Now, up next is Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. I mean, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is a spin-off to, you know it, Deep Rock Galactic. But in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, it is not a first-person shooter. It is more of a top-down shooter where you play as a dwarf. Yes, singular dwarf, because unfortunately in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, you cannot play with your other friends. It is a solely single-player game. So if you are a cooperative gamer fan, sorry guys. But anyways, it is a bullet hell game where you also get to gather resources, you also get to fight those different hordes of enemies, and also upgrade different abilities and gear. So yeah, if you are somebody who is more inclined to want to play the single player aspect to it, as well as you also am more inclined to like roguelite type of game where it is also very chaotic, where there's plenty of enemies to fight, definitely check out Deep Rock Galactic Survivor on the Steam Deck. Now, number 3 is Hades. Hades is a roguelike dungeon crawler game where you play as Zagreus, who is the son of, you know it, Hades. Since Hades is a very unforgiving father and Zagreus is tired of his father, he decides that he wants to escape the underworld. So you as Zagreus, you have to do all it takes to escape the underworld in order to get to the mortal world, in order to reside with your mother. What I really love about Hades is the hack and slash element. I love just going in there and fighting various hordes of enemies, as well as what I really love about Hades is also the different interesting boss fights that you got to do in order to progress in the underworld. So that is something that is also very interesting and very engaging, as well as really love the soundtrack of Hades. The music just brings about the vibe of the atmosphere of the game and what's going on in the game. So yeah, if you really love a beautiful indie roguelike dungeon crawler game, definitely check out Hades on the Steam Deck. Now, up next is Celeste. In this game, you play as Madeline, who has insecurities and where she needs to find security and find healing. And in order to do that, she decides to go on this journey to hike to the peak of Celeste Mountain in order to heal herself. And little did she know, as she hike up Celeste Mountain, as you accompany her, you will get to meet interesting NPCs where they will teach her about life, whether it is for the good or for the bad. And whereas you get to accompany her, you also get to witness her experiencing breakthrough, where she gets to break from her cage of her negative inner self. It is a very emotional game where you get to platform up the mountain and where you also get to learn more about Celeste and just cheer her on in her journey for self-discovery. But also, what I love about Celeste is that there are also various secret areas in the game where you get those secret items. So yeah, if you want a game that is really beautiful, as well as it has a beautiful soundtrack and where it could be challenging at times, but also where the characters may potentially motivate you in order to become a better person, definitely check out Celeste on the Steam Deck. Alright guys, my favorite indie game of all time, and that is none other than Bramble the Mountain King. In Bramble the Mountain King, you play as Ollie, who discovers that his sister is missing at night due to his sister wandering out into the woods and not coming back. So you, as Ollie, being a great brother, you decide to embark on this journey to hopefully find your sister and at the same time bring her safely back home. Now, as you journey out into the woods by yourself, you manage to find your sister. However, as you and your sister is on the way back home, your sister gets captured once again by a ferocious, mysterious creature, and so you as Ollie cannot go home just yet, but have to go find your sister and save her from the creature before it is too late. What I really love about Bramble is how there is an awesome narrator. As you progress in the game, there are times where the narrator will just say a interesting dialogue where it sounds as if it is somebody like your mom who is reading a bedtime story to you who is a little kid. It just kind of has this type of aesthetics, and I just feel like that is just really artistic, and where it is just something that is just often overlooked and also really nice. As well as what I really love about Bramble is how, as you go about where you have to go into those different houses to solve these different puzzles, there are also interesting booklets, these optional interesting booklets that you can read where you learn about those different enemies in the game, their backstory, and that is something that I also feel like it brings about this extra spice because it teaches me that potentially hurt people, that even though there were those enemies that are trying to harm Ollie, but at the same time I can sympathize with them, their behavior of why they want to hurt Ollie because they themselves have been hurt in the past. But another thing that I have to really warn you about Bramble is that when you start out the game, it may seem as just a fun, jolly adventure game, but as you go farther into the game, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I have to warn you is that it starts getting very dark and very horrific. So that is something to really note for if you are somebody who is very sensitive to horror games. Then Bramble may not be for you. You might get nightmares, just as a heads up, because it could be pretty scary later on in the game. In the beginning not so much, but later on it will be more scary, so you might have to avoid that. But if you are somebody who doesn't mind horror games like I do, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King, because there is so much to the game and where it speaks to me in many different ways. Another thing that I have to also warn you is that Bramble could be frustrating, because in Bramble the Mountain King there is no health bar. If you get hit by an enemy, you're dead. If you land in some spikes, you're dead. There is no grace as far as being hit, so that is something to really also keep in mind, that it is not easy. But anyways, if those things don't bother you, if you really love these type of games where there is a very big sense of emotion tied behind it, as well as where a game that it can speak to you in many different ways, as well as if you love these type of games where there's a beautiful soundtrack and a beautiful presentation, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King on the Steam Deck. Alright friends, these are 30 indie games in which I would recommend any Steam Deck owner to check out in 2025. Let me know in the comment section below, are there any indie games in which you would recommend me to check out and which I did not mention on this list? And as always, if you love gaming lists, gaming discussions, gaming reviews, and everything related to Steam Deck, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so you'll not miss another video. I try to post Mondays and Fridays around 6 p.m. Pacific time, so stay tuned. Once again, my name is Joanne from the Nomadic Gaming Guild, and game on!